capital, but also called out those who wish to boycott Israeli products. But of the greatest concern to France's Jewish community, rising anti-Semitism and the efforts to combat it. International relations expert Dr. Emmanuel Navon joins me now in studio to hash out this issue. And Emmanuel, these concerns of rising anti-Semitism, they're a real concern for French Jews.
There are, but on the other hand, there's a very strong stance of the French government, of the French president, to fight this anti-Semitism. Also, we have to understand that a large part of the new anti-Semitism in France and the violence against the Jews comes very often from the Muslim community, which is something that very many French officials, journalists and politicians would rather avoid mentioning, but it is a fact of life. So there is definitely a lot of violence online and offline against the Jews. As you mentioned, the third largest Jewish community in the world. This violence very often, as I said, comes from the Muslim community, but on the other hand, a very strong and clear stance from the French government and the French president against this new anti-Semitism.
What can the French government realistically do to combat anti-Semitism, both physically and online?
I think, first of all, there has to be a very clear message that it is unacceptable, and to draw a very clear line, as to his credit, President Macron has done, between the legitimate criticism of Israel and the delegitimization of the state of Israel. And when President Macron said that he will fight the boycott of Israel, saying, of course, you're entitled to criticize the government of Israel, but that doesn't mean you should call into question the right of the Jewish people to have their own country. It's a very clear message to an attempt, I think, in France to try and hide anti-Semitism behind a politically correct denial of the legitimacy of the State of Israel.
Let's talk about Iran, because it seems like there has been a lot of activity between France and Iran. The French foreign minister, of course, is in Tehran. The Louvre just had a joint exhibition in Iran. And I'm curious about this uptick in activity between the two countries.
So France, on the one hand, wants to keep the nuclear deal, as President Macron has been very clear, as opposed to the Trump administration. They do not want to pull out of the nuclear deal with Iran, but on the other hand, also very concerned about Iran's nuclear missile program, and they want to curb these missiles and Iran's very strong ties and support for Hezbollah and the threat that Hezbollah's missiles pose to Israel. So the French president has been trying to be very active on that, so far not very successfully, because he's a long way.
Okay, Dr. Navon, we got to leave it there. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Stay with